Um, this is something that a lot of us will go through drive-throughs and pick up, so this is going to be a homemade version of it. To start off with, of course, my name is Johnna, and I work for Ohio State University through the Ross County Extension Office as a SNAP Ed program assistant. And we are always going to tell you about our websites, the celebrateyourplate.org and the choosemyplate.gov. Two great websites to go to for information as far as nutrition, food safety, cooking tips, and lots of great recipes. So make sure you check those out. All right, Kathy, if you want to go on to my next slide here. All right, got to put a little plug in. February is Heart Health Month, and just wanted to kind of go over, we always talk about the My Plate, but this is just kind of no one ever really tells, I don't always talk a lot about how many servings of each one we should have. So, and this is actually adding in the water. So water is, our body is about 75% water, so it's a really important thing to have in our diet. So we should be trying to get in 8 glasses, or the equivalent of 2 quarts, and those are 8-ounce glasses, just 1 cup, 8 glasses a day. So, and just plain water is good, but if you're getting it in the form of, iced teas, that kind of stuff, try not to make it sodas and too much fruit juice because you're going to get a lot of added sugars there. Try to make as much water as possible, but, I know a lot of people don't like water. You can always put those little flavoring packets in. Do whatever you can do to make sure you're getting that in there. And then as far as your fruits, you should be getting at least 2 to 4 cups of 2 to 4 servings, or 2 cups a day. And down below that is your lean protein. That's going to be your fish, your chicken, your pork, your eggs, your vegetable proteins such as tofu, beans. You need to have 2 to 3 servings of that a day. And then your fats are down at the very bottom of that side of the heart, and we want to keep those to a minimum, but keep in mind we do need some fat in our diet because we do need it for body function. So if we can keep it to the good healthy fats, that's great. Other side there, we're going to have our whole grains. We need to have 6 to 11 servings, or 4 cups, and that can be a combination of anything made with flour. It can be oats, it can be rice, it can be popcorn, it can be any kind of form of grain there. And then your vegetables, 3 to 5 servings, or 2.5 cups a day. And obviously that's going to be, we want to eat the rainbow when we're talking vegetables. We want the dark leafy green, we want the orange, we want the red, we want all those different colors in our diets, because that's where we're going to get all of our vitamins and minerals are going to come from our vegetables and fruits for the most part. And then low-fat dairy. We want to have at least 2 to 3 servings of dairy, and always want to read our labels to make sure that we're getting the lowest fat possible of the servings. I know it's really hard to drink skim milk if you like whole milk, but it's something that if you can do it over a little bit over a period of time, you can cut yourself back and maybe at least compromise. The recommendations from the USDA is to try to at least do the 2% or 1% milks, okay? All right, Kathy, if you want to put it on me, we're going to get started, and we're going to start off with our first thing today, which is a homemade scone. And I don't know if you can see with the glare there. Kathy and I were talking before you guys come on. I had never made a scone until last year. I always thought, oh, scones sound really complicated. They're fancy. You talk about tea and scones. You talk about the queen and all that kind of stuff. These are the simplest things I've ever made once I finally, jumped off my little fear wagon there and tried it out. So we're going to start off with going over the ingredients. I've already measured out 2 cups of flour. We've got a 1/3 cup of just white granulated sugar. We've got some baking powder and baking soda right here. We're going to have half a cup of butter in this. So it's a little, it's not really fat friendly, but it's going to be better as far as the sugars and the salts that you're going to get from the ones we buy in the restaurants. Then we're going to have a 1/2 cup of raisins, or this is dried currants, but I've actually got some dried cranberries, which is my favorite thing. And then a 1/2 cup of low-fat sour cream, an egg, which is here in this bowl, and that's it, okay? So we're going to start off with, we're going to measure in our dry ingredients together. Like I said, I've already got the flour in the bowl here. I'm going to dump into my 1/3 cup of sugar there. And then I'm going to measure out 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And remember, when you're using baking powder and baking soda, we want to make sure we keep these measurements pretty accurate when you're baking, because that's going to be what makes I can't talk at all today. Makes everything rise to what we want it to look like as far as a cake or bread, or in this case a scone. Okay, so there's a teaspoon of baking powder. We want a quarter teaspoon of baking soda. So make sure that it's a nice level spoonful, just like we did the baking powder. Okay, so there's that. And then half a teaspoon of salt, but you guys know me, I'm going to cut that down to a quarter teaspoon of salt, because that is just more or less for flavor, okay? And then we're going to take our butter, and the recipe tells you to put your butter in the freezer. And actually, that's just to make it so it will grate easier, because we're going to grate this up into this. Let me mix this all together. We want to make sure we get all of our baking powder and our baking soda and our sugar all mixed in with our flour there. So get that all stirred together nice and mixy up there. All right. Now, I'm going to take my handy dandy shredder here, and I'm going to shred this stick of butter. Like I said, they call for it to be frozen, but my refrigerator stays pretty cold in the drawer where I keep the butter, so I don't have to really worry about that. But it does shred a lot easier if you have it in the freezer, okay? So I'm just going to wrap the paper up around it, and I'm just going to shred this up into my flour and my sugar here. If you can ever find one of these graters, this is probably one of my most favorite investments I've ever made, because you can just run this across here, and it grades things up so easy. Whoops, including the paper, so be careful there. Make sure you pull your paper back. And this thing is plastic, so it's not quite as easy to cut your fingers on it as what it would be if you were using the metal graters. And as you get down to the end there, you're going to get a little messy. Okay, now I'm going to just throw that in there as well. Yes, I did get a little piece of paper in there. Shh, don't tell my husband. He'll find that and I'll be yelled at. Okay, set this over to the side. Let me grab a paper towel to wipe my hands off. Now, this is a recipe that you want to make sure you scrub your hands really good to start out with, because you're going to get your hands in here and you're going to get dizzy with it, okay? So I'm going to take my fork and kind of stir this around a little bit. And you just kind of like if you've ever made pie crust, you want to work this butter into this flour mixture, so you're making it, it's going to come to the consistency of looking like almost like a cornmeal or a sandy type thing. Okay. And if you have a pastry blender, it makes it go a whole lot quicker. And you just work it through there until you get your butter worked into your flour. And you get a little messy. I usually, when I'm making these things, I have flour everywhere, so don't worry about it. That's why they made dishcloths. And you just want to keep working it around from the outside edge until you get all that butter mixed in with your flour. And you'll see it just kind of turning into like little grains of sandy. It's a good workout too. Good arm workout if you're working on your upper body right now. Since we can't go to the gym or anything, who knew cooking could be good exercise, right? It's part of that heart healthy month. Okay, so I've got this so it's all kind of blended in together. There might be a few big chunks in there. Let me get just a couple more in there. Now, if you don't want to shred your butter, you also can cut it up and just use your pastry blender. It'll take just a little bit longer to mix it together. Okay, and then I'm going to take my bowl of cranberries, which conveniently landed in my bowl. That butter makes everything a little slippery. And then I'm going to take my spatula and I'm just going to mix this all together. So your cranberries or raisins or whatever you're using, currants. You also could put, if you want to put some chopped walnuts or some pecans in here, if you want to put, just be careful though, if you get too much as far as the large ingredients in there, they may make your scones a little crumbly, okay? All right, I'm going to set that to the side for a little bit and get some butter off my fingers so I don't drop anything else. Now, I got a whisk and a bowl and an egg. I'll put crack my egg into my bowl. And then I'm going to take my yogurt here. And I'm going to put it in, not yogurt, sour cream, sorry. Actually, I say that because most of the time I use Greek yogurt instead of sour cream in anything I cook, so I'm just not used to saying sour cream. I'm just trying to go by the recipe today, which I don't do very often, if you guys have figured that out by now. And now I'm just going to take my whisk, and I'm going to whisk the egg and the sour cream together until it's nice and smooth. And you'll see it gets nice and creamy looking in there. Okay. All right, now I'm going to take my spatula and clean that all off there. And guys, we're just almost done with this, believe it or not. Now I'm going to take my spatula and put my egg and sour cream mixture down into my dry ingredients. I'm going to get all that goodness out of there. All right, set that over on the side. And I'm going to take my fork and I'm going to start mixing this together. Now this is going to make a nice sticky kind of batter, kind of. You want to take your fork until you get most of that liquid mixed in with your flour. And once you've got it, like I said, it's kind of like making a pie crust. So if you've ever made pie crust, you know how it gets really heavy and sticky towards the end there. And once you get it to the point where your fork really won't go through it too much, you got to use the tool that the good Lord gave you here and get your hands in there. And then just start working it, squeezing it like you would if you were making pie crust or noodles or bread dough, whatever you're doing. You want to mix it all together. And just work it to the sides of your bowl until you've got your dough mixed together. It's a little sticky, so you got to clean off your fingers every now and then. Just keep turning it, kind of kneading it over, and keep turning it over until you get all your dry ingredients off the top of the bottom of the bowl mixed in with your wet ingredients. Now, if you want a large scone, you're going to do this as one mix. I like to make these into smaller scones. That way, you know, like I said, this isn't the healthiest of dishes because it's got an awful lot of butter in there. So I make it into 2 batches and make smaller scones. So, all right, so now you can see I got the dough pretty much mixed together there. And it's not real super sticky, but it's way stickier than what a pie crust would be, okay? So now I'm going to wipe off my hand again here so I don't be dropping everything. Let me step away here for just a second and get it over the sink. Okay, so now I've got this just acrylic or plastic cutting board here. These things make really great mats to roll out pie crust, noodle dough, whatever you're going to do. And I'm just going to lightly dust this with some flour. You don't want to put a whole lot on there because we don't want to put a whole lot of flour into our scones. I'm going to take half of my dough, just twist it in half, make it into a ball. Then I'm just going to flatten this out. And as you're flattening it, you want to kind of keep your edges, you know, making it like a huge big cookie, okay? And then you're going to take your hands, the heel of your hand, and just flatten this out so it's about a 1/4 inch thick, okay? And as you're doing that, just keep your edges kind of rounded in. Just making a big, like I said, big cookie. Make sure you're keeping it even. And then once you have that done, you're going to take a knife and you're just going to cut this into wedges. So I cut across, across, across. And the idea of making them smaller is, you know, this is a perfect size for kids. And it's a perfect size for a cookie that's going to go with our yummy coffee that we're going to make here in a minute. Okay, let me get the baking pan over here. Now I'm going to take some parchment paper and I'm going to line my baking pan. You can put it directly on the baking pan, but you're going to get a nicer texture if you use the parchment paper, okay? And I'm just going to take these and lay them so they're not touching. Oops. Onto my baking pan. Okay, let's do the other half of this real fast. Put a little more flour down so it doesn't stick to your board there. But like I said, not a lot because you don't want to, you know, more flour you put in there, the drier your dough is going to be. And you don't want these to be real super dry because they're a scone. They're not a biscuit. Okay, so I got it nice and rounded. Just smash it out with my hands again. If you want to try to make sure you get them nice and smooth, you can always use like a heavier pan and just put it on top of it and smash it down that way and round off your edges. But I kind of feel like I'm playing with Play-Doh. You know, back to my childhood. Okay, so going to do the same. Cut across. Cut across. Cut it into your eighths there. Good math lesson for the kids. You can always show them this is how you do fractions. Cooking is a really good tool to teach math to young people. Okay. And I'm just going to put these onto the baking sheet just like I did the other ones. Now these are not going to rise up and be really super big. Like I said, they're not like a biscuit. Okay, 2 more and we're ready to pop these in the oven. I've already got my oven preheated to 400 degrees and I'm going to pop these up. One last little thing here. I want to take just a little bit of sugar and just lightly sprinkle over top of them, okay? Now, some people like their scones with a glaze on them. I just put a little bit of sugar on top of them, but if you want to use a glaze of some kind, say a lemon glaze or just a vanilla glaze, you put that on once you take them out of the oven, and it will make that like you get at the restaurants with the ooey gooey, sticky, nasty. Well, I didn't say nasty. I like them better with just sugar on. That's my personal opinion. Okay, I'm gonna pop these in the oven. I'm gonna have your oven rack at the center of the oven, and I'm gonna set my timer for about 15 minutes. All right. Let me rinse my hands off here real fast, and we'll get busy on this Café Mocha. Let me bring you over here to my other part of my kitchen, okay? Here we go. All right, so the Café Mocha is going to consist of, it calls for skim milk. I use almond milk, so I got almond milk here, a cup of coffee, a cup of water, which I'm going to get out of the sink here in a minute, some instant hot chocolate mix, and optional is going to be some whipped cream and a little bit of cinnamon sprinkle for decoration. So let me get my burner turned on here. I always turn on the wrong one. I knew I'd do that. And you're going to start off, I've just got a cup of cold coffee that was left over from this morning's breakfast. That's all it's here. So I'm going to take that, dump that into my pan. Okay, let me get a cup of just water out of the sink. If you don't like your tap water, you can always just use a little bit of distilled water or bottled water, whatever you have on hand. I'm going to put that in there. And we're going to bring that to not a boil, but we're going to bring it up to heat, okay? So while that's heating up, Kathy, you want to go ahead and go to my other slide there? Okay, so I want to do a little comparison here. Like I said, this is a couple things that we normally will go through the drive-through and pick up a lot, a Café Mocha and a blueberry scone. So this is the cost of a local restaurant to go through their drive-through and pick up a 16-ounce Café Mocha and a blueberry scone, $7.38. So for this grocery list total for everything I bought, and I did this on the local grocery website, if you would buy everything, and this is only if you had to buy everything, because most time you're not going to have to buy the sugar and the flour and all that stuff, but to buy everything for the flour, the sugar, the baking powder, the baking soda, the salt, the unsalted butter, the raisins or cranberries, whatever you're going to use, the no-fat sour cream, the eggs, skim milk or almond milk in my case, coffee, and this is even including a whole can of coffee, hot chocolate mix, cinnamon, and whipped cream came to $23.67. And I think I broke this down. It would be enough to make these scones probably 30, 40 times. And you saw how many scones I got out of that. So for you know, triple the money, you're going to have enough to make this stuff for at least a month or better. So look at all the money we can save just by, you know, making these up. And I've got a whole pan full of scones there. What I will do is I will leave a few out to eat right now, and then I will pop the rest of them in a bag in the freezer, and you can pull those out a few at a time, and you've got them to eat, no problem. Okay, so looks like our coffee's starting to steam there just a little bit. Going to take my hot chocolate mix here, and it calls for 4 tablespoons, and I think that's 1 pack. I'm going to measure it out just to make sure, okay? So I'm going to put 1, 2, I was heaping 2, 3, yep. So about 4 there in that pack. So 1 pack. I'm going to stir that together. Now, if you're using real milk, you would want to heat your milk up first. But since I'm using the almond milk, I don't really have to worry about it separating. I'm just going to add it in here. You don't want this to boil. You just want it to get warm. Okay. And then I'm just stirring it around. Hard angles to get you guys to see. I don't do much with my left hand. Sorry about that. And you're just going to get this so it's blended together good. Now, normally I would be using a sugar-free hot chocolate mix, so it eliminate most of the sugar out of this. So it would be a whole lot less sugar. But with me not going to the grocery as much as I normally do, that just hasn't happened. So, and now I'm going to put in, like I said, a 1/3 cup of the skim milk, but in this case it's going to be the almond milk. And I don't normally buy the flavored almond milk, so you're not going to be getting the extra sweet there either. This is just plain almond milk. And I'm going to stir that in, just a 1/3 cup. It's going to give it that nice creamy look. Well, that smells really good, guys. See all that froth starting on top of it? You can see how good that's going to taste. This is what I call adult hot chocolate. So, you know, when you bring the kids in and you make them the hot chocolate after they've been out sledding, you can make this real fast. Because, I mean, most of us always have a cup of coffee left over in the morning. At least in my house, 1 cup is about all you have left over, but you have 1 cup of coffee left over. So then I'm just going to take my ladle, and I'm going to ladle this out into my cup. Whoops, I better pull it out of there. There we go. And this will make 2 nice size. This is a, I think it's a 16-ounce cup I've got here. This is going to make 2 nice cups. I can take my little bit of whipped cream here on top. I can control how much whipped cream I get. And then I've already had some scones made up here. So looky there, guys. What do you think? We can have tea and scones or Café Mocha and scones. And with that grocery list that I come up with there, we can have it a lot if we choose to. Some things you can do, I mean, always make sure you're using unsalted butter. That's going to cut back on the salt in it. And as I said, by cutting these in half, if you would make this just the way the recipe calls and make the huge scones, you'd be getting bigger portions. So by cutting it in half and making the smaller scones, you're going to be cutting down on the fat that way too. And then go a lot further, because I mean, these are a nice size to go with your hot chocolate or with your Café Mocha, a nice size to have. So there we go, guys. What do you think, Kathy?
That looks scrumptious.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of the wrong time of day for me to be having Café Mocha and scones, but you can bet you I'm gonna.
Oh, yes, I would too, definitely.
Yeah, it smells really good.
And it is a lot easier than I thought.
Isn't it though? I mean, I honestly thought, you know, you would be a lot of different things you had to do. And everything that's in them you've got already on your shelf. It's not anything fancy. Now, if you want to make a glaze, you can take just like a little bit of powdered sugar and milk and a little bit of vanilla and whip it together and drizzle it over top of them once they come out of the oven, and you got a glazed scone that way. And you can add cinnamon in if you want to, or you can add a little bit of lemon juice into it to give it a lemon flavor. If you want to make the scone itself, you can put a little bit of lemon zest inside of it to give it a little more flavor that way. You can use different types of fruit. You can use like maybe some chopped cherries in there. Anything you want to put in them. It's just
Oh,
like I
yeah.
said, be careful you don't put too much in there because you have too many big chunks of stuff. They're going to fall apart. They'll get crumbled.
Right. Right.
But
So,
they're really good.
yeah, I think I'm going to have to try it.
Super easy.
Yeah.
Super simple.
Okay.
Okay, well, next week we're back and we'll be doing something similar with the kids. I'm going to be doing a healthy hot chocolate and an apple bread. So it's going to
Oh,
be something
that sounds
similar.
good.
I'm all about doing the comfort stuff right now. It's cold outside. I want that hot drink and that little sweet something in there. But
Uh-huh.
so we'll be doing that with the kids next week.
Well, good. That sounds great. Okay.
All right.
Well, I will see you next week then.
Okay. Thanks for taking time to watch me, guys.
Okay. Bye-bye,
Bye bye.
everyone.